Obama's critics. Florida Congressman Alan Grayson joining me from Orlando. He opposes any intervention at all. So after hearing the president, Mr. Congressman, yesterday, did the president say anything to change your mind?
No, it's not our responsibility. It's not going to do any good. It's dangerous and it's expensive.
And what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that when you say it won't do any good? When you hear Secretary Kerry spell out that you know, letting a dictator like Assad go with impunity means that it sends a message to other dictators who might have chemical weapons that they could harm their people as well.
Well, actually, there's only 4 countries in the world that have chemical weapons, and the largest of the 4 is the United States. So are we trying to send a message to ourselves? Well, that's not logical. I've heard that theory before, that somehow one country's actions will affect another country's and another country's and another country's. It's just the domino argument again. We'll call it the bomino argument. It's not logical. It doesn't make any sense.
So when the President and Secretary of State Kerry say that Syria threatens national security and that it behooves the United States to do something, you say this is not a national security issue?
Absolutely not, and there's a huge number of Americans who agree with me. We set up a website called don'tattacksyria.com and got over 10,000 signatures in less than 24 hours. The polls show that people understand that this literally has nothing to do with us. We are not the world's policemen. We can't afford this anymore. These military adventures that lead us into wars that last for a decade or more. It's wrong. We need to cut it off before it even happens.
Does this mean that it's at least comforting then to you that the president, while he said he thinks justifiably the U.S. should strike, but he still wants to hear congressional approval, is that any comfort to you that he wants Congress to be thoughtful about this and to give either the green light or not?
Yes, and in fact, the British went through exactly the same process a few days ago, and they came to the right conclusion, that it's simply not their responsibility. We're not the world's policeman. We're not the world's judge, jury, or executioner. No one else in the world does things like this, and there's no reason why we should. We've got 20 million people in this country who are looking for full-time work. Let's tend our own garden for a change.
Now, you mentioned your don'tattacksyria.com and that there are a number of petition signatures. People are on board with your point of view. But what about fellow members of Congress? Where do you believe the allegiance will fall?
Oh, the allegiance will fall into what makes sense for them representing their districts. You know, in my district, if you ask people, where does Syria fall on the list of your concerns, it wouldn't even be in the top 100. We have to spend the $1 billion that this attack will cost, according to the British authorities. The $1 billion that this attack will cost, that money is better spent on our schools, our roads, our bridges, our health care, and so on.
So if you had an opportunity to make your case to the president, what would it be? We understand that Senator McCain will be spending some one-on-one time with the president tomorrow. Senator McCain has been saying for a very long time that the U.S. needs to act. If you had that kind of face-to-face time with the president, what would you say to him as to why the U.S. should not go this, whether it has allies or whether it means going it alone?
Well, in fact, all the indications are we will be going it alone. Even French public opinion is overwhelmingly against this, and the French are the only ones who are entertaining the possibility. It should tell the president something, that when he's trying to vindicate so-called international norms, that there's 196 countries in the world and no one wants to do anything like this. But what I would tell the president is, first, no Americans have been attacked. None of our allies have been attacked. It's an unfortunate circumstance, but there's lots of unfortunate circumstances in the world. In Burma, for instance, there's a civil war that started more than 10 years before I was born. And 12 presidents have resisted the impulse to interfere in the Burmese civil war, even though far more people have died in the Burmese civil war than have died in the Syrian civil war. And I could give you countless other examples. Sometimes the highest international norm, the one to respect the most, is mind your own business. And in this case, it simply won't do any good. No one thinks that we're going to determine the outcome of the Syrian civil war by lobbing a few missiles into Damascus. No one thinks we will even degrade or eliminate the possibility of future chemical attacks by doing so. And in doing so, we'll be wasting a lot of money, and we'll be opening ourselves up to a counterattack. People forget this, but the embassy in Beirut, the U.S. embassy in Beirut, is 15 miles away from the Syrian border and just down the block from Hezbollah. So if we attack them and then they attack us, I think people can see where this is heading.
Congressman Alan Grayson, thanks so much from Orlando today. Appreciate it.
Spread, but who created Iraq? We did. That's our country. And now they're aligned with the Iranians. So the whole theory is that we're going into Syria because that's the way you march into Iran. At the same time, we've made it tougher. We've made it tougher for Israel. We've made it tougher for the people who want to live in peace in Iraq. And now we're just stirring it up in Syria. It's a civil war. We don't have the authority. And the vote in England, the British vote in the Parliament, that is fantastic. The first time since 1782.
Ron Paul,
the people are getting in charge.
I got to wrap it up, but I just want to clarify one point. You're not blaming the United States for the civil war in Syria over the past 2.5 years that have already resulted more than 100,000 people dead. I think we just lost Ron Paul. Unfortunately, the satellite must have gone down, but we'll have him back for sure. Ron Paul joining us. Congressman Quigley, thanks to you as well. Mike Quigley joining us.
You are a United States Senator. You may, at some point, be a candidate for the presidency. How would the United States look if the president says, I have decided to take military action, I want Congress to give me authority, and Congress does not give that authority?
I think it would show that he made a grave mistake when he drew a red line. I think a president should be very careful about setting red lines he's not going to keep. But then again, when you set a red line that was not a good idea in the beginning with, and now you're going to adhere to it or try to show your machismo, I think then you're trying to save face and really adding bad policy to bad policy.